slideshow. Here we go. All right, folks. So again, August Torus community meeting. I always like to start our meetings by giving a moment to look at our working product vision, which is transforming higher education through the science of learning. As we're talking about improvements and different efforts we're all making in Torus, I think it's helpful to remember that this is what we're all working towards. So our agenda. So for those of you who don't know, this past Monday, July 29th, is when we rolled out Torus version 28. And if you haven't been in the know on Torus, you might not know that Torus version 28 involved a complete revamp of our student interface, which we call the NG or Next Generation Interface, very creative. So, so last month's meeting, I actually canceled because it was on July 5th, which is the university, Carnegie Mellon, was closed that day. But what I did in place of the meeting is I posted a pretty long and involved demo. And I say long and involved, but I did break it into chapters. And I have gotten feedback that even though it's a really long demo, because there's a lot going on in Torus version 28, it's actually not that challenging to get through because of the chapters. Oh, I got feedback. Is it Tommy or Tommy?
Tommy.
Tommy. Thank you, Tommy. I am very happy to hear that you liked the video, because I put a lot of work into it, and the team helped a lot with that as well. So if you want specific information about what features are in Torus version 28, or how to interact with those features, I'm going to have some links that are in this presentation, which obviously you can't link to because you're just watching me present, but they all are also in the roadmap snapshot that I'm going to show, and links to all of this will be included in the follow-up email. So we have a user guide, we have a video. I made a demo course section that I actually think you might not be able to, now that I'm thinking about it, you might not be able to enroll in because I might have made it expire on the day that we go live. But certainly as you're going through Torus, the new interface, you can always reach out if you have questions, and we will support you. So I'm not really going to go into details about version 28, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the launch. And in particular, this is what I was referring to earlier, Sophia. We had, even though there's a lot of nice things I'm going to have to say about version 28, we also had some issues, and that led to us releasing our very first hotfix this very morning of August 2nd. And if you're not familiar with that term hotfix, it's an unscheduled release that usually is meant to handle some larger bugs that we don't want to wait till the next scheduled release. So for Torus, we have 4 scheduled releases a year, of which the Torus version 28 release was one of those 4 that happened on Monday. But as I'll explain, we had some, excitement that happened after that release, and some things that we're not going to be able to wait, that we had to fix as soon as possible. So I'll talk a little bit about our hotfix. And some other things that we did to accommodate some difficulties this week. I have a quick announcement about Preeti. I think I actually made a slide, but I'm just gonna tell you now because it's very quick. If you're familiar with our team, then you know that Preeti Sharma was one of our 2 UX designers, along with Jess Fortunato, who is here on this meeting today. And Preeti has left Carnegie Mellon. She did an amazing job for us. She was only here for about 6 months, but she really did make an outsized impact in that time. So we wish her the best in her next endeavor. But her last day at the university was, I think, Tuesday of this week. So, and that does, I don't think it's going to have a direct impact on the roadmap snapshot in terms of what's scheduled on there. But one of the things that we should note is when we're looking at the status that things are in on the roadmap snapshot, and when you go into the pages and see like, where are we in terms of research or design, that is largely work that's done by our UX designers. So we're down one person for the time being, and within OLI, then our only UX professional full-time UX designer is Jess, though she does get help from some very talented interns, and we also get some help from some of our partners in Arizona as well. But we're still in a period of adjustment and figuring out exactly what that's going to mean. But Jess and I are pretty confident at this point that we can actually still accommodate the roadmap that we have. We just have to kind of shuffle around some resources, but something to keep in mind. We will look at the latest Torus roadmap snapshot, which is already up on our website, and I'll show you where that is. I will talk a little bit about how Jess Fortunato is leading our Torus community meeting next month, which is very exciting, and then we'll have some final thoughts. So I will get into it. All right. I don't know why I said quick look at the launch. Oh, I said at the launch, not at Torus version 28. We're not actually going to be taking a look at Torus version 28. Again, we have our demo video. If you really want specific information about exactly what is in that release, and in particular, if you use the Torus triage board to report, did you say something, Caitlin?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know my audio was on.
Okay, fair enough. I feel like that happens with at least one person each meeting. So thanks for getting that out of the way. Yeah, the release notes are going to have the more detailed information. And in particular, if you use the Torus triage board to report bugs that you see or to make feature requests, then you can kind of follow and see which specific triage tickets are in the release. And you might notice if you look at the Torus triage board that a bunch of things have moved into release status on that board. And those are the things that were part of Torus version 28. We have a user guide that was made by our very talented new Scrum Master, Louisa. So again, I have links here, and I'll show you this briefly in particular, because I don't think we talked about the user guide, but this is a pretty extensive document that Louisa made that talks about and has some really nice screenshots and goes through new features and whatnot. And this is linked from our website. I'll show you that in a bit, but this hopefully is a useful document. And it does have an outline here. And also, if you're familiar with Notion, then you can kind of come over here at any point to see this outline and kind of jump around to different places in different interfaces. So even though there's a lot of changes that have happened with Torus version 28, and then between the demo and this document, I'm hoping that that is providing some good support. Again, if you have any questions, then you can always follow up either with technical support, with a technical support question, or just general product questions. You can definitely follow up with me. Let's really quickly click on the release notes. So this is literally, so there are 221 issues or tickets in this release. It's a really big release, and every single one of them is listed in the release notes. So this is really your most detailed document. And for things that do have a corresponding triage ticket, you'll actually see a link here, and you can click right into the triage board to see in more detail what that issue was. And honestly, though I'm about to talk about this hot fix, I do want to say that we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about Torus version 28. We've had a hot fix that has impacted a number of our users this week in ways that I'll talk about, and that's definitely something that we take seriously, and that we've acted to try to resolve quickly, because it's important that every single user has a positive experience and ability to get through their courses. But I don't want that to overshadow the fact that we've gotten a lot of really good feedback of folks who have really loved, in particular, the new student interface, have found it intuitive, who think that it looks good. So Overall, I still feel like this has been a positive launch. We've had some issues, some warts on it, and sometimes that's something we have to deal with in software. And we've dealt with it as quickly as we were able. But I'm pretty proud of the work that the team has done on this. And I hope that if you haven't already been into Torus this week since we did the release, that that you take a moment and do that at your earliest convenience. Any quick questions or slow questions just on Torus 28 before I get into the hotfix? Sometimes I feel like
I have a quick question that
yeah.
just popped in my mind. When
Yeah, sure.
the turnover happened, did the students, like, next time they logged in, was like a little bubble was like, "Hey, this looks new," or
Um,
something? I don't know. Or did it just they logged in and it was new?
So we don't actually have that feature. That would be a great thing for us to do in the future, is have some kind of like really quick wizard that says, hey, like we've made this update and here are new things and let's link you to documentation. That's not something that we support technically yet. What we did do, I mean, we scheduled this release to happen at a time when we were really minimizing the number of students in courses that were in flight. And so that way, that experience of, you log in on Sunday night and it's one interface, and you log in on Monday and it's totally different, was happening to a relatively small number of students. And we worked really hard to make sure we were communicating with all of the instructors of all of those courses, so that all of the instructors knew it was happening and knew how to get to resources, and knew how to support their students. So that was really the non-technical strategy we were following to try to prevent there being just a big shock where students didn't know what to do. Since your group is one of the groups that had students who were in flight, at least in your case, and I think in a non-timed like semester-based class, you tell me, did you feel like we communicated decently to you beforehand, or did you feel like we kind of left you hanging?
Oh no, yeah, of course. No, you definitely communicated. And Courtney's been watching our email, and she said that that there wasn't any like, "Hey, I'm confused, what's happening?" or so there's been silence, which I guess is like no news is good news.
Yeah. So I'm glad. I mean, I was not trying, I didn't want to put you on the spot there. So if you do have feedback or areas for improvement, you can follow up offline if you are more comfortable with that. But yeah, we tried to support the instructors and the course designers and whatnot that way. We don't I think that's a great idea for a feature, and it would have been really handy this time, but we just don't have that. No.
Okay, no problem.
Awesome. Okay. I am going to move on then to Torus version 28.1. Again, this was a hot fix, and this was released pretty early this morning, I think about 7 a.m. this morning. But before I get into any more details about it, I just want to talk a little bit about what happened. So our release of Torus version 28 happened on Monday morning about 7 a.m. And then early in the week, I think, Monday into Tuesday, we started seeing some issues where students were having some difficulties, and there were a couple of different categories. One was just system latency or slowness, sometimes with the system being so slow that it was effectively unusable. And unfortunately, this was happening at the times, like the cause of the latency, and the latency got worse the more students were accessing the system at once. So unfortunately, this was something that a lot of students experienced, because at the most high traffic times, that's when that was going to get bad. And we did have students at this point in the summer semester where some of them are actually trying to do final exams. And obviously it's not a good situation when they're trying to go in and finish up assignments towards the end of their semester, and they can't get into the system. I would say that those latency issues were the things that affected the largest number of students, again, simply because the more students were trying to access the system, the worse it was getting. But we also were seeing some examples of problems that were worse than that. And those were, specific people who, no matter when they tried to log in, they weren't able to log into the system, or if they were trying to submit an activity, it wouldn't submit. So we were seeing some pretty gnarly problems, and obviously it was very time sensitive for us to provide support. So I would say that the support that we provided came in kind of 3 waves over the course of this week. The first thing that we were able to do was giving, through our technical support resources and our wonderful tech support resources, Kim and Hal this week have really been going above and beyond to not only support these students, but also kind of gather data and be able to pass information back to the development team. But the first wave was before we could actually do anything from a technical perspective, we were able to provide some information, such as if students, logged out and logged back in, came back at a lower traffic time, cleared their cookies or their cache. I think that we had some cases of students who maybe had a resource in their course that they had bookmarked, and because of the change, then the bookmark didn't work anymore, so they had to access it a different way. So some of those types of issues we were able to resolve just from a technical support perspective while we were working on a technical solution for some of the bigger, gnarlier issues. The second wave of providing support was actually changes to not the code base of Torus, but to the server configuration to be more forgiving in terms of beefing it up to support higher load, bigger database, more memory, bigger capacity for cookies, which I'll talk about a little bit. And that happened very early on Thursday morning, yesterday morning. So that was going to provide some relief, or actually, I think quite a lot of relief to students who were seeing issues with that latency or, with the load issues. And then the final wave was this hotfix that happened this morning, where we actually were able to identify some things that needed to be fixed in the code, and get those fixed and tested and diagnosed to a point where we felt comfortable that releasing this hotfix that we did this morning. This is a little bit of a balancing act because we simply, given the time frame, do not have time to do the level of testing for a hotfix that we would for a planned release. So we have to be careful. And when I get into the release notes, you'll actually see some examples of what I'm talking about, where we can't do things that are risky. That might actually make the problem worse. We have to find solutions that are low risk, that we can do quickly and reliably, that are going to provide relief to students. So in some cases, we've put in place like a stopgap measure while we take a longer time to investigate and make sure we're really making a more sustainable long-term solution. So I am gonna quickly go through the release notes from 28.1. I don't want to get too bogged down in details, but before I do that, does anyone have questions, comments, anything about the situation that I described from this week? All right, so I'm going to quickly go through the release notes and I just realized I'm not doing a slideshow here. Here, I'm going to quickly go through these release notes, and then I have a slide that's kind of talking about what are the categories of problems and how are we planning on addressing those in a longer term way. So this is our short-term solution, and I'm also going to talk about a longer term solution. Okay. So you'll see here that there were actually 6 issues. I'm going to quickly talk about what they are. The first one, I'm not going to get into the details here. What I can tell you is here where it says V1 analytics. V1 analytics slow, V2 analytics fast is the main thing that you need to know. Earlier, before Torus had the student load that it had, we had analytics that were simpler, but that were that didn't support as many users, that were called V1 analytics. At some point before I started working here, so I don't actually know when this happened, Then we upgraded the analytics to be more sustainable. And we had some regressions where some course sections were actually using V1 analytics, and it's contributed to the slowness that we were seeing. So we fixed the problem. One thing that I do note down here in our known issues is this fix here doesn't actually go back and convert the course sections that are already using V1 analytics because of this bug into V2 analytics. So we still potentially have some slowness there, but that bug fix was one of those higher risk things, like going in and messing around with different values in the database. We think that this bug fix is going to provide a lot of relief. And then in the longer term way, we're actually going to make sure that all core sections are using the faster analytics. So that's something that will be coming in the next couple of weeks, or at the very latest in Torus version 29, which is set to be released on October 2nd. At this point, we actually have it. We've been so focused on the short-term solution, we actually haven't made a decision on when and what's the safest and best way to go back and fix this for course sections that were already impacted. This second one, if you happen to be someone who pays a lot of attention to our release notes, which I'm guessing none of you are, because I write them and I don't even want to pay attention to all of the detail. This is actually something that was listed as a known issue for version 28. It has absolutely nothing to do with anything that happened this week. It's just a problem that sometimes happens with the back arrow that we had kind of flagged, we caught late, and we were like, when we do a hot fix, we need to make sure this gets in there. This agenda item is something that you are probably, if you're using Torus, going to notice in the database, especially if you either watch the demo video or one of the people who accessed this version in the staging environment, that on the homepage, there's this agenda section that talks about what's coming up that's scheduled for the class for the next couple weeks. So this was also a major source of some of the latency we were seeing, that the way that this is pulling in data is very expensive in terms of resources. And for large course sections, it was causing some pretty significant delays and slowness and problems that way. Now, in the long term, we're actually going to fix the way that this agenda item on the homepage accesses data so that it's more efficient and doesn't cause those problems. That's another one of those things that we just didn't have the time to do in a safe and reliable way in the time frame we were talking about. So the quick and dirty and low risk solution that we put in is that we made this a configurable feature, and by default it is off. So when you go and log into Torus as a student, you are by default not going to see this. Authors of the course can go in the authoring interface and turn this on as a feature. And I think it's fine to do that if we're talking about smaller course sections. If you have a larger course that has, you're talking about like hundreds of students, we're going to recommend that you keep this turned off for the time being. And this is another one that once we've made this solution, whether it's for a later hotfix or something that waits for version 29, the need to have this default turned off is going to go away. So it will be a regular part of the page again. But this is kind of the stopgap measure that we put in place to prevent this from interfering with students. This next one was actually happening to a relatively small number of students, I think, but it's just I don't want to get into the technical details, but it has to do with if your browser can't determine what time zone you're in, which does not happen in most cases, but we were seeing some of this. And if it does happen, it is a major problem for users that happens to, that the homepage doesn't load. And therefore it's difficult to you can't access the application at all or your course at all. So we did fix this one, though it's a pretty small number of users, I think. Finally, this is another issue. I said finally, there's one after it. Penultimately, we have an issue here that was happening to a relatively small number of users, but again, it prevents them from accessing Torus at all. They're getting, when they try to log in, through Canvas or another learning management system, a message that says not authorized, even though they're a valid user. So we fixed this one. And I'm really not going to get into this last one because it's very technical. It's just a technical issue that that was important for us to fix, supporting some of these other things. And it's fixed now. So I think that's everything I had to say about the specific issues that we were seeing. Again, I'm going to kind of talk about what our longer term solution is. And also like how did those of you who have been in communication with us about this know that we've been doing a lot of testing for version 28. It's a really big version. We know we have this whole new student interface. We know that making this many changes to the student interface involves a certain amount of risk. So we've been doing a lot of testing for months. So I think it's a really valid question to say, how did this happen after all of the testing you did? How did these issues happen that were preventing students from being able to access the system? I'm going to talk to that in a moment, but any questions before I move on? Okay, slideshow. All right, so I do want to emphasize as I talk about this that our focus has been making sure that every single one of our students can get in and successfully interface with their courses. It hasn't been doing a postmortem or a long investigation. Some of these issues we really do need to spend a little bit more time investigating. And we have time scheduled for that moving forward. So I'm giving you a very preliminary idea of what we know has happened and how we would respond to that. But I might give you some different information if we were having this conversation, say 2 weeks from now. So what are some of the issues or the reasons that that we saw these issues? So one was simply user load. We're talking about hundreds of users. Even now in the summer when we're at our lowest load point, which is why we chose to do this release at this time, we're still talking about hundreds and hundreds of users as opposed to the dozens of users who we had doing testing. And I would say that the most extensive of that testing was done by about 4 people who are professional quality assurance testers. So even those dozens of people had, fairly limited interactions. So when we go from dozens to hundreds, then we have the capacity to see issues that we just didn't see. And I think that was happening both in terms of some of the latency or slowness issues that weren't happening during our testing process. And also in terms of some of the other issues that were just due to kind of a variety of users. Again, there's going to be less variety when we're talking about dozens of folks. The obvious way that we deal with this is doing automated load testing. This is something that's part of our longer term quality assurance plan anyway. And I think that part of our conversation is going to need to be, can we move this time frame up? Like how does it make sense to like what is the most sensible plan for this moving forward? But certainly just using the resources we have of humans, we're not going to be able to simulate those hundreds of users. This actually is making me think back to the very first quality assurance job I had many years ago before automation existed, where we literally did just get lots and lots and lots of human beings to like go into the system and use it. But we have better techniques now. So that's what we're gonna move forward with to prevent that type of issue from happening. I mentioned this briefly, but if we have users who are bookmarking links or have browser caches that are referring to outdated versions of pages, because the entire student interface was changing, this was a problem that honestly, we don't have experience as a Torus team with making a complete change to an interface this way. We just never have done something quite this drastic or major. And therefore, this honestly just wasn't something that was really on our radar of what if we have students who are using outdated links and how are we going to support those users? So I think that the way to handle that in the future is one, just trying to have a more graceful way of handling that type of error. I think that those users were just getting like a resource not found error that can be very confusing, especially if you're just not technical and you're like, what is this? So a more graceful explanatory error. And I also think just better communication. As I said, we had been in pretty good communication with all of the courses that were in flight. And if we had anticipated this, I think that we could have had this be something that instructors were communicating, or were just better positioned to say, hey, oh, are you using a bookmark? Just make sure you're not doing that. I think that would have been a better, a way that would have caught a lot of those issues. Another issue that we were seeing that I don't think that we tested extensively enough for are resources that were in flight at the time of deployment. And by that, I mean, if you had a student who maybe started a quiz on, before the deployment, and then the deployment happened, and then they're going and trying to submit the quiz, we were seeing some issues that were happening in those scenarios. And we actually do have some testing that we do of this, of resources that were in flight, where you set something up and then you do a test deployment, and then you go back and make sure that it works. I don't think that the testing that we did was as extensive as it could have been. And I also think some of the cases that we were seeing, and we haven't done enough data gathering to know if it's all of them, but we were seeing a lot of patterns of someone who started a quiz, say, a month ago. And then now they're going in and trying to make changes to it. And that's simply not a scenario that we test for. And we still don't know, is that what made this happen? Is it that it was just so outdated and something about that, resulted in these students having difficulty submitting a quiz or an assignment? So I think for that particular thing, that's another situation where automation can help, because we can have a lot of different scenarios. We can mock up situations where maybe something is really, has been sitting there for a month or longer, or just a lot of different, variety of scenarios, so that we're actually getting the automation catching errors that would be really difficult for us to catch as a limited number of humans going through and testing. And I would say the last category that I'm aware of at this point are just things that I think we didn't catch because they're environmental setups that students had that were really rare. In some cases, at this point in investigation, we still, don't even fully understand, like, what was their browser setup, or, what were they doing that's so different from other students. But I think this is another scenario where automation would help, because we can just have a lot of different variety of situations. And I also think this is something that is helped by the data gathering that our help desk resources are doing. It doesn't even need to be a lot of students, but if we're finding out that we have students that are using some obscure browser that we're not familiar with, or or just some setup, in privacy settings that we haven't tested for. Like, these are things that if we get automation set up, we can just add to the scenarios we test for in a much easier way than having kind of a long list of kind of rare setups that we're trying to run through with human testing. So I think that the general theme that you're going to see here is automation, which again is something that we've been looking to improve in our testing anyway. It's just a matter of how is this experience going to impact our timetable and our plan of exactly how that unfolds. That is everything I was going to say about 28.1 and about the issues that we saw this week. So if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and ask me now, or you can follow up later if you would rather not ask it in this meeting. All right. I already made my announcement about Preeti, who we're sorry to see go this week. So now I'm going to talk about our roadmap snapshot that was just posted. And I don't actually have a link here. And the reason for that is I like to show you, always you have an excuse to show you guys how to find this on the Torus website. Of course, it's going to be linked in your emails that you get following up this, this meeting. so you don't have to access it, you know, on your own, and you can always bookmark it too. But I just want to, this is so weird. Trending searches, plantar fascia, okay, never mind. Sorry, I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole here. But if I Google Torus OLI, the first site that comes up is actual Torus, the courseware. That's not what we want, but we do want to go to the Torus website, which is oli.cmu.edu. And if I go here, then under Torus, the site that I'm specifically going to go to today is Torus Community. It's going to be very slow because it knows that I'm showing you guys how to do this. So this is the site. This has a lot of resources for you. Sorry if you see me do this like every month, but I'm going to bang my drum. You see the whole schedule for Torus community meetings, and for ones that already happened, you can link to that month's snapshot if you're interested in seeing how that changes over time, and also the recording for that meeting. Over here under important links, among other things, you can see whatever is the latest Torus product roadmap snapshot, which for some reason my August link here isn't working. So obviously I was failing when I made my update to the site, but I'm hoping that this will link to the August snapshot. No, man. All right. I'm gonna have to pull it up separately and then make the update, because I swear I feel like this is a situation where I went through and made the update, and then there was some kind of final submit that I did not hit. We'll see if I made it. There's a different one other page that I should have made it on, so hopefully it will be there. But after this meeting, this August will link to the August snapshot. Right here, you'll have a link to the recording of this meeting. This latest Torus product roadmap will link also to the August snapshot because that's the latest one. Pardon. You have a link to your instructions on how you go to the Torus triage board and report a bug or request a feature. And if you're interested in doing that and you're feeling like you need support, you can always ask me for help as well. And then this is our user guide that I already showed you that Louisa put together for Torus version 28. But let's go over to see if I actually successfully updated this page. Wait, did I want to go to Torus platform? I just really hope that the rest of you, when you're doing like a live demo like this, have the same experiences that I have. Oh, look, August. Okay, so this page I actually did successfully update, so I should be able to do the snapshot here. And the other pages I will update after this meeting. All right, let's click in. Same product vision that we just talked about. Again, I always try to keep that front and center. All right, so those of you who have been keeping up with these snapshots will note that this is the first time that we have Torus version 32 here. Up through last month, then we had Torus version 28, which has come off the roadmap because now it's in production, and this is our for release moving window. Torus version 29 has not changed. Torus version 30 has the same items, except we've added a new one, which is student completion details. For those of you who are familiar with using the OLI legacy system, you know that for individual students, if they want to know details about their completion, like this, section is at 80%, what do I have left to do? They can get more deeper information about like what is left to do, what percentage are different sections at. You have better information in the legacy system than is in Torus right now today. So we are going to be upgrading that so that the details that students can get in Torus are at least as good I think this is something that's important. I mean, I do think it's kind of frustrating for students if they see that something's at, say, 80%, and they actually have to kind of go through all the resources to figure out, all right, what didn't I do? If they thought that they had finished everything, that can be kind of cumbersome and frustrating. So this is going to give them, again, at least as good information as they got in Legacy. And I think this is something that's going to kind of go along with our certificate feature that that Jess has been working on, because obviously you kind of have to know when you're getting a certificate, like what if there's requirements that of certain participation for a certificate, it's helpful to know more details about what's missing. So this is something that we've added on. I don't think that we have any screenshots for that yet, but maybe in time for next month, not to put any pressure on Jess, we'll see. And I don't think the rest of these have changed, but I haven't talked much about these features in later releases. So I was planning on going a little bit into detail in this document about what these different things mean. So, and I know we only have 15 minutes left for the meeting, so I'm gonna do that in a kind of quick way, like detailed but quick is my plan. It would help if folks have specific questions about a particular release or any of these particular items. I'll be happy to start off with those to make sure that your questions get answered. And if not, I'm just going to kind of start going chronologically.
I think we're definitely interested in hearing more about the authoring analytics as well as the certificate. Although I know certificate's December, so we can also just focus on October.
No, I'm happy to talk about both of those. So let me talk first about authoring analytics. So this essentially is a data warehousing feature. One thing I had talked about earlier is we had started off with what we call V1 analytics, which worked and were simple and straightforward for when Torus was very small, but didn't scale to a larger number of users. I think that's something that our authoring users have noticed is that we're kind of hitting some growing pains in terms of getting data out of the authoring interface, either in terms of looking at reporting and visualizations within Torus, or exporting something for like a data shop download. And the data shop download in particular is something that has been kind of fragile. It breaks and then we fix it and then it breaks. The analytics within Torus can sometimes be pretty slow. Sometimes you do a request and you just have to sit there hanging and waiting until you can actually see the data that you're looking for. And that is another issue of growing pains, that our V2 analytics are supporting faster faster analytics as we go, but essentially, and I don't want to get too technical here, and if this is something that you want to get more technical about, anyone at the meeting then or who's watching this recording, I'm happy to talk to you about it in more technical detail. But without getting too technical, then essentially we need something called a data warehouse that is going to help us to get to the next level, that's going to support essentially an arbitrarily large number of users and quite a lot of data. When we talk about big data, you need to have a data warehouse. So this is something that is being built out actually specifically by Darren, our director of engineering. So there's some work on this that's being done by the team in general, but this is mostly something that Darren is building out. And the reason I'm bringing that up is one of the conversations that we have to have. Darren, in the midst of this, like once he kind of did his magic and made sure that the team was ready to go, he actually went on vacation. So he's on vacation right now after making sure we could successfully get our hotfix out. When Darren comes back from vacation, then one of the conversations we have to have is about some of the changes that I had mentioned related to this hotfix that need to be fixed in a longer term way, that we've kind of done some stopgap measures, but that's not going to cut it in the long term. And because those are things that are largely going to need Darren's attention, something that we have to talk about as a risk is that these improvements to authoring analytics are might not make it into version 29. Right now we have until our code freeze for version 29 is September 13th. That gives us, I think, less than 6 weeks. He's already been working on it, but you know, I just want to set expectations now, and we don't know enough about it for me to have updated the snapshot. It's possible that by next month's snapshot, this is going to have gotten pushed simply because Darren is one person, and you know, some of these things are more pressing. But also we could work out a way that we could do both. So look out for next month's exciting meeting. But ultimately what we're looking at here, once this is implemented, are quicker and more reliable reporting and analytics for authors. That's really going to allow us to then use that as a foundation to kind of expand a lot of the types of reports and types of data that authors can get, you know, moving into the future. And also a much more reliable data shop downloads, where we don't have this thing where it works for a while and then it breaks, and it works for a while and then it breaks. Does that answer your question, Sophia?
Yeah, and also Courtney's on the call as well. She's like a better sense of timeline, but essentially where we just had like an all hands meeting this week, and you know, we decided that we needed to have a Torus meeting to sort of organize, prioritize, you know, the things that we're looking for so that we could bring them back to you all. And I'm just wondering, on the analytics front, if this is for the next update, if that's something that we should be thinking about sooner than later to communicate about that, or if Courtney has any comments to that end.
No, this is great. This is so helpful to me. This is my first meeting, and this is all really good information. And Sophia, the questions you're asking, I'm literally writing about this meeting in another document, trying to clean up from this week. So, yeah, I don't have any questions. I'm just a fly on the wall.
Yeah, so this data warehousing feature is something that is important to a lot of our users. And I mean, of course, this is kind of part of the main value proposition of Torus in general, is the analytics and the data and the ability to then feed that data back into an improved learning experience. So we take this very seriously. And I hope that a month from now, we'll be telling you that we figured out a way to do everything that we want to do in version 29, because this is something that's in high demand. But I'm happy to continue the conversation, you know, after the meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And then the other thing that you had specifically asked about is certificates. So I'm going to try to go over this one pretty quickly because I know we're running out of time. Also, this is something that Jess Fortunato has been working on. It actually has gotten kicked down the line for at least one release. I'm trying to remember if it was 2, because it turned out, you know, that implementing it was going to be a bit more complicated than we initially hoped. And it's really important that we get this right. So I hope that for those of you who are waiting for certificate capabilities, and you may have seen this getting you know, moved to later releases, that's probably frustrating, but it's because we're just making sure that we do it in a way that is completely sustainable and you know, usable and scalable for our users. But this is the capability of not just having one course lead to a certificate, but also, you know, I know we have numerous users who have multiple courses, and you kind of like, I'm sure that Jess knows, you know, more the right language for this, but like more complex certificates where you have to complete multiple certificates to get another one, or multiple different course sections. This is a feature that existed to some extent in the legacy system. The way that it existed in the legacy system was really not sustainable, where essentially we had to get members of the development team to kind of set this up for each certificate. And that's just not something with the number of users we have now, and then the number of different certificates that is sustainable for our development team. So Jess has been working to make this something that's going to become a reality in Torus version 30, which is scheduled. We don't have a release date for it yet, but it will be our end of the year release, 2024. If you're interested in this, Jess has some really beautiful presentations. I don't want to make more work for her, but she already has so much beautiful documentation on this that I'm sure you could set up a time to go through with her and really get a feel. And I imagine Jess talked to you about this, didn't she, Sophia, or someone on your team?
Yeah, we talked about it early on, and then she followed up like a month ago, and it happened to be like the day before I was going on vacation. And I was like, great, talk to Capstone. Capstone's working on this. But Capstone's finished and they don't, necessarily have the full picture. So we definitely we should check in with Jess again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that having, getting an update, like she has put so much work into this and I'm really excited about it.
Well, it's a big thing for us, so
Mhm.
we're excited to learn more.
Excellent. So we're running low on time. Does anyone have any particular feature you want me to talk about or answer questions about? Because otherwise I will probably just leave it for you guys to look at this and schedule time in a future meeting to really dig into some of these other releases in the future. All right. I do want to point out that at the end of this document, this is where we reference some of the helpful other documents like release notes, demos. For View 28, we're actually not going to have our blog post until next week, but when I send your follow-up email after this meeting that has the link to the meeting recording, and of course, then I will fix the thing I didn't apparently post on the Torus community website with resources. Then by then the blog post that is probably the most human readable description of version 28 is going to be up on our site, and that will also be linked here. And you can always follow up with me with any questions. So let me go back to my slides in case I forgot something. Yep, Jess is going to be leading our next month's meeting. She's going to be talking about our user experience research and design process, which I think will be probably a much more exciting meeting than me just jabbering at you for an hour. Any questions before we end the meeting? Anything or any comments, concerns? All right. Well,
I know I've been asking a lot of questions, so can you just hang back for a couple minutes, you and Courtney, in case anybody else has other questions? I don't want to take all the time.
Sure. David, I know that you and I have a meeting, but your schedule is usually pretty flexible. So if you don't mind hanging out, then we can talk later. But yeah,
Sure.
I'll hang out with Sophia and Courtney and everyone else. I will be in communication next week. Have a great day.